I'm Bob Munro. I'm best known in Kenya as the oldest Mathare youth, but I also have another life which first brought me to Kenya in 1977. Mysa was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. About 2 weeks later, Wangari almost killed me in Mathare. Married to Ingrid Munro, the founder of Jamii. We have a little United Nations family of 5 children, and that's the whole family. This is our oldest daughter, Mia, from Korea, Camila, Waithaka, Karithi, and our youngest son, Mina, and my wife, Ingrid, of course. And so when we were adopted by Waithaka back in the late 90s, it was a case brought up under the old colonial law which forbid interracial adoptions. And the judge at the time, Joyce Olowach, she was looking for a case, because you know how well known she is on children's rights in Kenya. She was looking for a case, and happily we became the precedent setter for her, because she argued that the law said that you can't have interracial adoptions except in special circumstances or exceptional circumstances. And she argued that our family was an exceptional or special circumstance because the husband was of the Canadian race, the wife was of the Swedish race, one daughter was of the Korean race, and we were already an interracial family and therefore an exception, and she approved the adoption. And that became a precedent-setting case in Kenya adoption history. I was introduced to real life in Kenya much earlier by Father Arnold Grohl, the founder of the Ndugu Society, who I'd met in the early 80s when I was coming here 3-4 times a year as an advisor to the executive director of Habitat and the executive director of UNEP. And I met Father Grohl, who insisted I join him. That was in the early 80s. I insisted I join him on some weekends while I was here, and we went out to Mathare together. And I saw the work that he was doing. So when I moved here, when our family moved here in '85, he then insisted I also do something in Mathare. And so he was the one who encouraged me and pushed me to start Mysa. But between '87 and '95, no aid agency took sport as a serious development activity. So in my other life, I was working with the aid agencies on environmental issues. But I could never persuade them that sport was a serious development activity until Mysa showed them. Mysa was the first in '87 to link sport with garbage cleanup. That's what we did in those days. So it's not surprising, that's where my 2 lives intersect, my environment, UN life, international career, and Mysa and Mathare United. It was my environmental work which brought me to Kenya in the first place. I was involved in helping set up in its location in Nairobi, because it was the first UN agency headquartered outside of Europe and North America, and I drafted a good part of the General Assembly resolution setting up Habitat in '76, '77 and getting it located in Nairobi, initially in the Kenyatta Conference Center. That was that was in '79, but the first time I came here was for the first meeting of the Commission on Human Settlements, and as I was an advisor to the first executive director of UNEP, Arcot Ramachandran, and I remained that for the next 10 years. So that was my first time in Kenya. So it's not, I wasn't in Kenya by accident. In fact, I've been working for or in Kenya since 1972. Kenya is my home and my family's home, and I feel good about how I've helped in various aspects, Mysa and football and environment and UNEP and habitat. Mysa was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's always announced at 11 o'clock in the morning. So shortly after 11, I get a telephone call from a Norwegian friend saying, we didn't win. Mysa didn't win. But another Kenyan did. And I said, oh, who? Wangari Maathai, he said. And I said, but that's great. It's Kenya. It's Africa. It's environment. It's women. That's a great choice. Don't be discouraged by this. About 2 weeks later, Wangari almost killed me. Well, it's true. She had a small dinner for 5, 6 of her closest friends to celebrate her winning the prize. By the way, I didn't know that she was one of the contenders, and she didn't know that Mysa was. So she had a small dinner for close friends. And at the door, Wangari gave me a big hug. But as she was hugging me, I whispered in her ear, Wangari, do you think if I won the Nobel Peace Prize, I would become more beautiful too? And then she squeezed me till my ribs felt like they were cracking. Yeah, we had a lot of good moments together, and sometimes sadness as well, of what didn't happen, what should have happened, and what didn't happen. But on balance, yes, there's been a significant improvement both in Kenya and globally on environmental issues and moving towards sustainable development. It's just not enough is happening fast enough. And in some cases, like on climate change, we've gone backwards in the last few years. And that's a big disappointment. Because that's, when you're working with youth, it's you, the youth, who are going to pay the price, not us. We won't be around in 20 years and 30 years from now when the really serious water crises are striking and the climate change-induced problems are occurring here in Kenya and globally. And so what our generation, some of us were able to try to do something, but what our generation hasn't done and the generations following us are going to impact, sadly and significantly, on your lives 20, 30 years from now. So that's why I say not enough has happened fast enough, and it's still not happening fast enough. This ball is the most expensive football in the world by far. Mysa were the global pioneers on linking sport for development. This was a development project that used football as a starting point. It would start generating its own leaders, who would then become the heroes and role models for the younger generation.